So Mr. Austin has a total 11 years working experience in technology and non-technology based companies. He has domain expertise in product management, product marketing, and product design, that is user design and experience. Mr. Austin developed an SME management framework called Business Survivor Growth Model, BSGM framework in 2020, which currently has over 250 citations from 95 countries from around the world. This framework has been downloaded over 1,000 times by international researchers globally for research purposes. Although this purpose of this framework was to serve as a roadmap to help small businesses that manage and grow their small business into success. This framework can be found on Google search. Mr. Austin has developed multiple business theories, management framework, and principles such as the principle of causation and outcome, principle of resources control, will acquisition theory, among others. CHSD Career Tech Platform, I would like us to welcome Mr. Austin as he take us through product management in the fintech space in Nigeria. Mr. Austin, you can the host will have you share your screen, so you can just continue. Thank you. You're welcome. Mr. Sharon, I don't know, maybe you might have to make Mr. Austin to unmute. I don't know if he's started already.
So, thank you so much, everyone. I want to apologize for the delay. Okay, so jumping right into this webinar, we started by looking at, sorry, give me a second, I'm having echo. Okay, sorry, my phone was echoing since it was already logged in here. All right, I apologize for the delay. Okay, so now we're looking at product management, and we are talking about its role in fintech industry, Nigerian fintech industry. So now, the first question one would ask is, what is product management? And how is product management different from project management? So product management is different from project management in the sense that project has to do with the management of any, how do I put the word project now? So if you're trying to build a house, that house is considered a project. If you are trying to build a car, or if you are trying to build a railway or do anything that pertains physicality of infrastructure, it can be called a project. Do you understand? So now, what is project management? Managing those infrastructural facilities from the what do you call it? From the design phase to the full implementation phase. You can also call that project management. That is in plain terms. Then product management, on the other hand, just look at product management from this angle. You have an idea. You want to take that idea from 0 to hero. Now, the ability for you to take that idea, that business idea, from just your imagination to a physical usable product that people can use. So your ability to manage that transition from the idea level to the product level is what makes you a product manager. You understand? So that is the difference. So now one would not ask then, so what then is the difference between a product manager and a project manager? A project manager manages physical projects, physical facilities, physical infrastructure, whereas a product manager manages tech infrastructures. That is, you are building tech infrastructures, but you're not necessarily the developer. You are just managing the development of tech infrastructure. So that is the difference between both of them. Let me just quickly run through. I've explained the difference between a product manager and a project manager. So in product management, there are 3 core areas. There is the discovery, which is the part where, so there's something they call design thinking in design, but the discovery is more like you're trying to see, okay, what you're about to build. Is there something there? Is this something that is worth building? Then you have the planning. The planning is, okay, so how are we going to build it? Then the development is, what do we need to put in place to make this idea come to life, or to bring this infrastructure to life. So you've already known about my profile, so I'll just go straight to the slide 2. Okay, so now the next question you'll now be asking is, we are talking about fintech. Because fintech is a buzzword that has been thrown around a lot lately. So the question you might now be asking, so what are the different sectors of fintech? Because when people say fintech, the first thing that comes to your mind is an OPay or a PalmPay or a Flutterwave. These are the things that comes to your mind naturally when you hear the word fintech. But fintech has different segments. There's something they call fintech market segmentation, where each user, like each player, is categorized into different sectors. So now the main sectors of fintech is the payment sector. Now, the payment sector, this is the sector that involves um, companies like Flutterwave, Paystack, InterSwitch, OP. There are many more players in the payment sector. So payment sector is more like the digital banking sector, where people um, transfer money, receive funds, and that kind of stuff. Then there's the lending sector. The lending sector is the one you hear, buy now, pay later sector, the loan sector. Maybe you want to take quick loans, quick loan, and then you have um, the the loan platforms like I throw those names again, those loan platform. There is the Palm Credit, there is the Okash, there is the Sofree, there is the Rem Money. There are many platforms that offer lending possibility to people seeking finances. So let's go to the next one. Then still talking about categorization of fintech markets, then you look at the wealth tech. So the wealth tech are people who are helping the everyday Nigerians who want to build wealth. You understand? So it's like they're offering their platform for you to build wealth via their platform. So you have things like PiggyVest, RiseVest, Bamboo, and Crowdwise. I'm sure you guys are familiar with most of these platforms. So these are the different categories. So which means that if you want to go into fintech, you need to first understand the sector in which you are going into. What market are you going to be playing in? Are you going to be playing in the wealth market, lending market, the payment market, the crowdfunding market? Then there's the personal finance market. You understand? So that's it about that. So now, still coming down to talking about fintech, because the whole idea is we're talking about product management in the fintech market. So now, then you can now start looking at who are the key players in the fintech market according to statistical. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Please forgive me if I'm they listed out top players in the fintech market, and you have the Paystack, which everyone knows, the Money Point, which almost every business now has an account with. If you walk up to any kiosk or shop, and ask them you want to transfer money to them, they'll give you their Money Point account. So everybody is familiar with that. There's the PiggyVest, as we know. Maybe you want to save money, you want to save all those 10 naira, 20 naira. So instead of putting this in a photo, PiggyVest came up with a system that allows you to lock your money for a while and then collect it later. And then you have the e-transact. You understand? So these are some of the players in the fintech market. Now, they are also considered one of the major players, but they are not the only player. They have a lot of players in that sector. Okay, so we have the unicorn players. So the unicorn players so when you hear the word unicorn, unicorn means when a company is $1 billion in valuation. When your company is valued at $1 billion, you are automatically categorized as a unicorn. That is just it. Okay, so now who are some of the unicorn players? You have the OPay, you have the InterSwitch, you have the Flutterwave, and you have the Remitter. So that is it about that. Okay, so now the question now one might be asking is, what are the factors affecting? So we're still going to talk about product management. So what are the factors affecting the fintech space? So if you want to enter the fintech space, you want to start something, or it doesn't even matter, doesn't necessarily like just fintech alone. If you want to enter any of the tech space, so you need to. So according to um, um, the regulators in the market, or those who are reporting the market, observing the market, they have stipulated what they consider the major areas or major factors affecting the fintech space. And they've categorized that in the politics and economic instability. Like, as we know that there was a time where we had rising in dollars, naira to dollar exchange rates, where forex, where dollars was rising astronomically, and it was increasing on a daily basis. And automatically that increased the cost of living in the country and increased the cost of doing business typically in the country. We are all familiar with that saga. But then the where politics now comes in, you might not be wondering, how does politics concern fintech? Well, you can look at it from the angle of policy. So you can see that, for example, the latest CBN policy, where getting an international monetary transfer license. That is, if you want to get an international monetary license, that is, you having the ability to transfer money from Nigeria to Uganda or to Spain or to Europe or to Asia or any part of, as long as you're going outside Nigeria, it is called international money transfer. And so usually the formal licensing cost to have that was initially used to be 500,000. Now that licensing cost has gone up to more than 5 million naira. You understand? It's quite expensive now. And then you now have to make a minimum capitalization of $1 million. So the question is, how many Nigerians can afford to have these funds available? But it is just the policy that the CBN governor has made available to everyone playing in the fintech industry. So what are the other factors affecting the fintech space? You can talk about the infrastructure. If you want to set up a fintech space now, it's not a walk in the park like you would often think it is. Just, go just create the design, get a developer to build it. There's a whole lot more that goes into it. In a proper digital app, there is the normal interface you see. There is the NIPS part. There is the middleware. There is the core banking. There are a whole lot of layers of a fintech application. You, on the other hand, you're looking at it as like one way, but there are a whole lot of background logic that are going on that you're not even aware of. So that's what they call infrastructure. That's those infrastructural facility that allows you to build and scale effectively is the infrastructure that we are referring to here. Then you have the investment funding. Now, this is where you talk about receiving funds for your business idea, getting funds. And then we know about the latest migration movement called the Jackpass syndrome, where people are leaving Nigeria, and they're saying that most tech talents in Nigeria are leaving the country. So now one would now also think that fintech has been the hot cake in the Nigerian tech system, which is the one and only. So if you want to start a business, all you are thinking of is just fintech and fintech alone. So you have it is that there are now other sectors that are rising and now coming to take prominence over fintech in a subtle way. You have platforms like the agri-tech. You have the agri-tech, you have the insurtech, they call it insurtech, yeah. You have the health tech, then you have the edu-tech, you have the pop tech, you have the HR tech, and a whole lot of other tech. So these other tech sectors are beginning to rise because they are like green ocean areas. They are not really as saturated as the fintech that has a whole lot of players playing in that space. And so if you are going to that place to compete, you're like competing with dragons and vampires that would literally suck your blood out of the market, just using that figuratively. But then I'm just trying to give you an understanding of the fact that other sectors are now rising and competing shoulder to shoulder with the normal fintech applications. So we all know about the rise of artificial intelligence, AI. AI is now becoming very prevalent. Everybody now is talking AI now. In almost everything you see AI, there's like a new buzzword of the tech industry. And then you have the blockchains and the digital banking. So the blockchain, this is it's like Web3. So if you are conversant, some people just attribute blockchain to cryptocurrency, and cryptocurrency is blockchain, but they are not the same thing. It's like you saying that mechanical engineering and the whole of engineering discipline is the same thing. Mechanical engineering is just the subsector of the core, and that's the engineering um, um, industry. You understand my point? The same way cryptocurrency is a subset of a blockchain. You understand? So it's like it's one of the chains under the blockchain. It's not blockchain itself. You understand? So that's just it about that. So let's move down to the next one. So we're coming down to the very core of product management. So I know some of you might now be wondering, product management works in three different phases or in three different phases. Yes, let me use that word. So there is the phase where if you are a founder, let's say you work for yourself, you have a business idea and you want to build a tech out of it, you want to convert your business idea to tech, you understand? So that is one phase. That's you are a solo founder in itself, or maybe you have a co-founder. It's just you and your co-founder that is building the idea. The way you will build the idea is different from the way you will build the second phase. So the second phase is when you are in a team. So you are still starting. Maybe a founder approaches you and tells you to come and work for their company, and that they want to build a tech startup. You understand? That is phase two. So no, okay, let me should I call it phase two? Okay, let me say okay, let me call it alpha, beta, gamma. So alpha stage is the stage where you are doing it alone, you and your co-founder building a startup. Beta is like you being invited by another founder to come and work on the startup, to build it, to grow it, to go to the market, launch, and become big. You understand? So it's either they are inviting you as an executive member, as an executive team member, or they're inviting you as a co-founder, as one of the co-founders, whatever the case may be. That is more like that's so product management in that case is slightly different from the alpha stage. Then the gamma stage is the one where you learn product management, you go work for a company who is willing to pay you for your product management training. So they invite you to a company that has a large pool of guys, employees. You understand my point? Working in different sectors, and then you are coming in as a product manager to take their product idea to market and make it successful. Because the whole idea of you coming in is not just to come and watch the product go to the market, is for you to ensure that the product is successful in the market. That is the whole idea of your product management stage. So now these are the three different stages I've mentioned. So now the question now you might not ask is, all three stages follows what you can see, this product design process. Now, what is the product design process? You start with the user research. You start with user research. Then you convert the information you found from your research to information architecture. So what is an information architecture? Information architecture is when you organize your information from your research. So for example, let me give examples so you can relate to what I'm saying. So say, for example, you you want to build an idea concerning maybe an AI tech, for example. And what would the AI tech do? Maybe you want to do the next ChatGPT, for example. So what people would usually say is that you should go check who is going to use it, what is their current pain point, what do they like, how do they, so you do like a user persona of the kind of the target audience you're going to be talking to, and what those people what are they currently using? What are their frustrations? What are their pains? So you would usually be expected to come up with user personas and all that kind of stuff. That is now still coming back to the first instance I gave you. If you were a founder starting a startup business, you would be the one to do this yourself. However, if you are in the better stage where you are going to join a group of founders, which means you're not going to be doing it alone. They might have a UI UX person who is going to run it for you or who is going to do that for you, so you don't need to do that yourself. Now, if you are in a gamma stage where you are working for a company that has big systems, the design is different, the people who do the research is different. So all you are just doing is pulling information from the research people who have done the research. So I'm just giving you different instances of how these things apply. So you can have the mental picture, because a lot of times they just give you the information, but you don't know how it applies and at what point do you even get to use it? How do you even know what to do at different circumstances? So that's what I'm trying to explain. So the information architecture, this is now after you've gathered the information about from the research that has been done. Either you collect it from the people who have done it or you did it yourself. Then you now do something to call information architecture. So how does this work? Information architecture is like a flow chart. It's like saying the process in which the gathered users' data, how will it work? So say you're doing a user journey or you're doing a sitemap and you're saying that, okay, this is how it is going to work. People come, they log into the app, they sign up, they add to cart, they buy, they check out, they pay, and you get your money and you try to upsell to them. You understand my point? That flow from when they log in to when the job is done is the information architecture. So that user journey from start to finish is usually what is classified as information architecture. So you're trying to classify the movement of users from one point of the product to the next. Then you now talk of interaction design. Interaction design, on the other hand, is like you're doing high fidelity mockup or high fidelity design of the idea from the information architecture. So you've converted your information architecture to high fidelity design. Now, the interaction design has its own process. There are processes and systems inside it. You understand? So once you, this interaction design is like you're trying to design how the design is going to look. How is it going to look like? What is each screen going to say? Depending on what you are designing, it could be a mobile app design, it could be a desktop app design, or it could be a web app design, whatever the case may be. You get the point. Then once you've done that, then you now do the prototyping. Like I said, if you are working in a team, you might not need, as a product manager, you might not need to worry about all of these things I'm explaining. For me, user research to prototyping, you might not need to worry. In fact, even down to visual design, you might not need to worry about it because this is just the design process. So who worries about this is the UI UX people, the product designers, and the UX research and UX designers. So that's just it about that. So let me move to the next stage. So now, still talking about product management. Now, what you might now be asking is, okay, so how does product management really works? So I'm assuming that you are joining a team and the team has an idea. Now, it is always the standard in the industry says that before you build, you go ahead to build that solution. You are expected to test to find out if that solution will be accepted or customers will be willing to pay for what you're about to build. This is the standard norm in the product management industry. So what they would usually advise you to do is to build something they call an MVP. So what is an MVP? An MVP is called minimum viable product. This is the, so what this means is that you are building the core functionality of the product. You are looking for the core functionality of the product and you are converting it into a user, how will I put it, a user-centric site that people can interact with, work with, and even try to pay for. You understand? For that particular thing that you built. You understand what I'm trying to say? So why and where is this MVP system coming from? So the MVP system is coming from two angles. So in the product management system, there's something they call story point estimation. And so there are two set of people in that particular space. There are people who believe that if you're going to build an idea, all you just need to do, once you have your research, your user research, and you've gotten all the information you need, and you see that, okay, there's something in what you are building, just estimate how long it's going to take you to build it, give the stakeholders a number of hours or weeks or months that it's going to take to get the job done and build it. That's it. You understand my point? Whenever you finish, you finish. That is one. That's once a set of from the product management sector. Then there's another part of the product management sectors that say that you don't have to build the whole thing like finish. What you should do is you should take the core foundation of the idea that you want to build. You understand? Take it to the market, test it to see if people are willing to pay for what you are building. If people are willing to pay for what you are building, then go back and finish the whole thing. And that is where the MVP and that's where the MVP idea comes from. So now the question now is, how do you build a decent MVP? So there are 5 steps. One, you can get an audience. That's the first step. You first need to identify the audience, build your audience, know who exactly what you are building. So how do you do that? You build a landing page and then you run ads on that page, or it could be through Google Sites, it could be through no-code tools. You could use different no-code tools to build something, to quickly test and check and see if it's something people want. Then you then get then the step 2 is you listen to what they want. So after you've run your ads and you've invited them to the site, you will now start asking them questions as to trying to find out their pain points and if what you are offering actually addresses their pain points. Then you now talk of you test your ideas. That is, you have to test. Don't forget that you've already done your user research prior before now. You are only just trying to test your hypothesis to see if your USAP is catchy enough, or if people like it, or if people don't like it. So in this, when you are doing your MVP, it's just you're not doing like thousands of people or millions of people kind of marketing campaign. You're just doing a selected focus group of people that you're trying to put together to see how they perceive your product and if they like it or not. Then you now build the basic product, then use the audience the feedback that you've gotten from the audience to now refine the product even further. So now the next question you might now be asking is, so what are the characteristics of a minimum viable product? Some will say make it basic but useful. But you see, building a minimum viable product, you have to be as visualistic as possible, which means that if you can make your website motion, like to have motion better, the less static the website is, the more interesting it is going to look. But you need to not forget that in real life, the fact that your site is interesting and fantastic and beautiful does not guarantee that people will buy what you're building. When it comes to bringing out that wallet and paying that money, there could be a big difference. But here, you are just trying to find out if it's something that would fly. Then you do a soft launch. Now, soft launch, as I said, is just a focus group. It doesn't have to be a lot of people, just focus group that will just look at it and see if it's something that makes sense to them. And in the course of them looking at it, they will give you feedback. And then with that feedback, you iterate based on that feedback. And then you make it more affordable and attractive via the pricing. So now, moving on to the next question. So how do you know that it is time for you to move beyond the MVP process? You see, like I said when I first started, when I talked about the three stage, I said the alpha, the beta, the gamma. Now, this stage I'm taking you through is I'm assuming that you are a tech entrepreneur or you want to start your own business. That is where all of this phase is playing off. But if you are going to get a job in a big company, most of the time, most of these things have already been built, majority of the time, or they get somebody to build it for them. You might not be the one to do the building. You might just be the one to supervise the building. Do you understand my point? That is if you are working for a tech company. But if you are working for yourself, or you're trying to set up your own business idea or your product, your own tech company, you would need to know all of these things because it will be expected for you to set them up for you to finally be able to scale. Because by the time you go to investors, they're going to ask you this question. If you have an MVP, and yes, if you have an MVP, have you validated the MVP and have you confirmed that the MVP works? before you finally came to them. If you can prove that your MVP works, then they will give you money. If you can't prove it, then they will not give you money. So that's it. So the question now is, as an alpha user of product management, how then do you now know that it is time for you to scale away from your MVP and build the full solution? So now market trends can be a very big indicator. So after you do the MVP, you push it out, you run more tests, you get more feedback, you keep doing more tests. While you are doing this, you don't do this in eternity. You need to put a cap of when it is time for you to move, because the market, innovation, technology is changing every six months. Between 3 months to 6 months, innovation is something new is coming out. So you cannot be sleeping and carry mattress and bed sheet and lie down there and say, I've built MVP, people like what I want, and then you stay there. You need to start making plans to move. And then how then do you now know it's time to move? Market competition. Once the what your competitors are doing will give you a sign that it is time for you to move. Then resource availability. You see, sometimes the market trends can be moving in a particular direction that signals you that it is time to move. And competitors can be making plans to, come up with new features that, that literally challenges your territory, your space. Now, the question is, if you are going to make that move, you need to check your resources, because to build a full solution, you understand my point, in product management is not going to be a walk in the park. It requires resources, it requires cash, it requires money. So it's either you have people who are willing to take shares that will come into the company and build the company for you at little or no you giving them cash, or you look for people who you will pay money outrightly that will build it for you, especially if you are not a programmer or you're not an engineer and you don't know anything about coding. You understand my point? However, you need to understand that if you are a business owner and you're going to talk to an investor, they're always going to ask you who builds the product. Are you the one building the product, or do you have a programmer or an engineer that builds the product? If you do not have a programmer that or a developer that builds the product, it's automatically a red flag. They will not give you funds because they'll be feeling like you will not be able to pull through, and because they don't want the fact that you go and hire somebody outside to build it for you. They'll feel like you cannot sustain it because the person that you are going to call to build it for you will always ask you for more money every time you want to make revisions and updates and adjustments to your startup. You understand? So team expertise and acquisition. So in the course of you trying to, know whether it is time for you to move, you need to know, okay, is it time for me to get do I have the experts in the on the team to actually make this happen? Then once you've been able, so what this means is that you might go and approach one or two people that you know, either a friend of your friend or a friend of your brother or your cousin or your sister. It doesn't matter who it is. The point is that you are able to spot and identify people who can help your cause as an entrepreneur, and then use that to your advantage. And then we talk about the next one. So I just want to confirm, can you all hear me? So I just want to confirm that you guys can still hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. So now this is the next stage. So if you notice, since I have been talking, I have not actually introduced the proper product management itself. That is the ideologies behind product management. Why is that? Because you don't just, except you are in the gamma stage where you are being invited as an employee to work for a company, a majority of the time, you have to do all these things yourself. Nobody's going to do it for you. And when you are learning product management, majority of the time, they're not going to tell you all of these things. They're just going to skip all that part and just go straight to the core product management, where you're talking about Scrum, you're talking about agile methodologies, you're talking about Kanban, you're talking about a whole lot of that. And then you're learning different principles. You're learning how to use Jira, how to use ClickUp, Monday.com, and every other thing. But the truth of the matter is that when it is time for you to do that for yourself, you start struggling. Why? Because you are used to working in a team, and here you are. What a team would do, only you or two or three of you will not have to do all that work yourself, and then it becomes overwhelming. It becomes if you're not passionate about it, you might just eventually give up or tweaked along the way. So that is why I'm taking my time to explain different stages so you can quickly understand at what point does product management kick in as far as tech is concerned. Because if you're going to build a fintech application, you need to first understand, first of all, you need to first have an idea, and that idea needs to solve a problem, and that problem needs to um, you need to have a solution to that problem. You understand my point, which is peculiar to you, and that solution needs to have a USAP, unique selling proposition, how you are going to tackle it, what makes you different, and why people should take you seriously. So these are the things you would have sorted out before you get to the development stage. Now, once you've sorted all that out, then you do something they call PROD. There's something they call PROD documentation. So PROD stands for Product Requirement Documentation. So what does that mean as a product manager? So as a product manager, PROD document is part of your tools, it's part of your arsenal for working. Why? Because if you are going to build an idea, you need to understand the features and functionality of that idea. You need to know what will the idea be about, what will it contain, what is going to be the scope of work. Because by the time you're bringing developers to build the idea with you, those developers are going to be asking you, they're going to be asking you about the scope of work. So let me rush because of my time. So now let's come down to this. So I developed a model and a principle, and I guess I will introduce that in the first. The first principle, I call it principles of incremental innovation. So what does that mean? The principle explains that for a company to gain market relevance, the idea must undergo swift development, immediate deployment, iterative testing, feedback collection, and product refinement in a continuous cycle until the product reaches maturity. Now, this is the standard process of it. This is where product management comes in, because as the CEO of your tech ideas, of your fintech startup, you would literally follow this idea continuously until the idea becomes a success. Then you now talk about the product value proposition framework. So this product value proposition framework explains that if you're going to build a product, you must understand, first of all, the pain points of your customers. You must develop your product in such a way that you've looked at the personas of people that are going to use your product and the use cases where your product is going to be applied to. And then your product has to be designed in such a way that it will build and enhance trust in the mind of your customers. So these are the things that you need to bear in mind before you even start building the product in the first place. Then the next thing, after while you are building the product, you need to, that's all of this is where you will not factor this in your PROD documentation, is where you will not check experience. So what experience will people or your users enjoy when they use your product or when they use the product of the company you are working for? What are they going to get out of it? What is going to be the outcome? That's where you see this outcome here. What outcome will they enjoy by using that product? What value will they gain from using that product? These are the three basic things that matters in the product. If these three things are dead, then the product is dead on arrival. Do you understand? So once you're able to build the product and the product marries successfully with the customer in the target location or in the market channel where that customer exists, then you are bound to enjoy something they call traction. Now, what is traction? Traction is where you are able to validate your hypothesis and get some form of monetary value for the idea that you sold. So you've taken that product to a marketing channel where the customers are. The customers have seen it and they are patronizing you. You've automatically triggered this traction block. Now, this traction block, once you're able to scale that traction block on a local level, regional level, international level, you then get to market acceptance. That is where you get to the market acceptance as far as this framework is concerned. So there's a whole lot of explanation that comes with this product value proposition. I'm not going to explain it too much, but you need to understand something. Before, if you are going to compete in the compete favorably in the marketplace, you need to understand the strength of the product that you are building. All right. So now the question now is, now you've figured out what you want to build, you've understood the frustrations, the pain points, you've known what it's going to be about. You have your PRD documentation. Now this PRD documentation contains the scope, the features, the requirements, the user stories. It contains everything that there is to it about the product. You understand my point? You have this down. Now your PRD document is where that PRD document is what you would eventually convert to your product backlog. I'll get there in a minute. So now look at it in this case. Now you figured out what you want to build. There are three things. There's three things that can go wrong in the course of trying to build. If you look at option one, you get people that will build your product for you, but they're not working synergistically. Everybody's working scattered. Now, the implication of that is that at the end of the day, the product is going to fail. Because why? The team are not working in synergy. So people will be building contrasting futures. So what I'm working on, somebody else might be working on that same thing, or it might be incompatible. So all of us will not be on the same, will not achieve, like, the overall success of the product will eventually suffer. And if you are the product manager in charge of this particular, for option one, you will technically be fired, literally, if you are working in a company, because they will feel like you are not organized in general. Then the option two is this: you get your engineering team, you break the project into small tasks. This is where the waterfall model. So I'm sure you guys have heard waterfall model, and you've also heard agile methodologies. So this is where people now adopt the waterfall model, where when they get the ideas, they get the requirements, they build, you understand, they test, they revise, they take to the market. So why it's called the waterfall model is because it follows a one-way street. You understand my point? It's after, so one task precede another. So which means that if you don't complete one task, you cannot move to the next task. So this number two is similar to that. Although you will get the product built, but it's how will I put it? You're going to run into issues along the way, because what it means is that turnaround time will be extremely high. It's going to take you longer time to complete basic things versus when you are working in an agile system. So option three is the agile system. That is what I was trying to explain when I said that your PRD documentation is created from your product backlog. And then from your product backlog, you extract your sprint backlog from your product backlog. Then from there, you also determine your goal from your sprint backlog. You understand? So that's it about that. And then you now break your sprint backlog into epics. And then those epics, you break them down into features, and those features are broken down into user stories, and those user stories are broken down into tasks. So that is how the agile system works in option three. So most companies and businesses go with the option three approach. All right. So now these are product management terms that I've often used in the industry. You hear so when it comes to agile methodologies, the first thing you hear is Scrum. Now, Scrum in itself only exists when you are building the product. It doesn't exist. So Scrum is like the building stage of the product itself. That is where you hear the word Scrum. So in Scrum, you have sprint planning, you have daily Scrum, you have sprint review, you have sprint retrospect, and you have backlog refinement. So I'm sure you might be like, okay, so how is this a ceremony? So sprint planning is like activities, set of activities you do before the actual sprint event itself. So if, say, for example, now you are in you are the product manager, and then you've started working, you've done all the every other thing, and you want to start working on the product itself. So what does sprint planning, why is it even important? So sprint planning is like, what you now do is you need to, your PRD, your product backlog, you need to first of all understand exactly what and how the product is going to be built. So to do that, you need to undergo what they call sprint planning. So sprint planning is a stand-up meeting that happens before the actual sprint event. So what you now do in that sprint planning is to do what they call sprint grooming, or you can call it product grooming or product backlog grooming. So how does that really work? So what you are now doing is that you're prioritizing futures, fixes, requirements, and you're prioritizing it on the basis of order of importance. You understand? So this is where prioritization framework comes in from what you can see here. So here you are trying to say, okay, based on the features and activities, based on the features and requirements, then you now talk of daily list.
Hello, Mr. Austin. I can't hear you from my side. I don't know if you are hearing me.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't know I was muted. Okay. So where was the last place what was the last thing you heard?
You were about explaining the previous page, I think, yeah.
Oh, okay.
The
That's
page
this
before
page.
this, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so I was just explaining Scrum ceremonies. I explained sprint planning. I said sprint planning is just it's just a stand-up meeting you have before the main sprint event. You understand why is this important? Because you're trying to do what they call product backlog grooming. You're trying to groom the features, the requirements, the specifications in such a way that it's like you are refining them so that you can put them in order of priority. And I said daily scrum is like daily stand-up meeting you do on a daily basis to evaluate the tasks that has been given to you and how well you completed those tasks. You understand? Sprints are usually done between 2 to 6 weeks. You understand? But that is the normal standard conventional one. But some people go as much as 12 weeks, 8 weeks, depending on what the future is and what they have to build that will determine how long it will take. Then I said sprint review is when you shipped a deliverable and then you are expecting, then the stakeholders are reviewing the deliverables to see, to give you updates and areas to make adjustment. And then you go back to the Scrum team so that they can, look into the review, the updates and areas of adjustment and bug fixes. And plus, the stakeholders will also bring new recommendations that they feel you should make adjustment to. You understand? Then I said the sprint retrospect. I said the sprint retrospect is you reviewing the last sprint that was held. Were there any, are there any spillovers? Are you carrying forth any of the sprint activities? Are you moving them to the new sprint, or are you going suspending them for later, like based on order of importance? So what is going to be the basis is going to happen in this sprint retrospect, where you are now evaluating the last sprint versus the new one you are about to enter. Then I said backlog refinement. I said backlog refinement is when you are refining your product backlog, features, requirements, user stories, epics, is when you are refining it in such a way that you are placing them on the basis of hierarchy, which one is important, which one is more important, which one is less important. So you are stacking them. So the most important ones will be the ones you will do first, and the ones that are less important are the ones you will do last. You understand? But the determinant factor of which products will go, which features or requirements will go into the sprint backlog is dependent on something they call user stories. Sprint points, Jerry. Sprint points. So sprint points is points you allocate to a certain user story to determine which one is going to take order of precedence. So now what does sprint points mean? It means that you are looking at how long will it take you to build one product. If in building a keyboard is going to take me 2 days, in building the screen is going to take me 4 days. Now, building the keyboard in 2 days is called 2 story points. Doing the screen in 5 days is 5 story points. Building the whole laptop, you understand, it's 10 story. If you're going to take you 10 days, it's 10 story points. So the more time it will take you to build that product will determine the story point you would allocate. Now that would now also now define which one will enter the sprint backlog. The sprint backlog, or which one would wait for the next sprint. So that's how they define which one moves, and that's where this backlog refinement comes in. There's also something that they often use. There's something they call sprint capacity, and they have sprint velocity. You understand? These are words that are often used and thrown around in the product management space. Then you have prioritization framework. I said the hard framework here is used for when you're trying to test user satisfaction, happiness, and how well they are using the product, if they like it and they're adopting the product. And I said MOSCO is an acronym for must use, must have, should have, could have, and won't have. So you're trying to say, okay, based on that's the features and requirements that you stacked on, which one is more important, which one is least important, which one is most important. You understand? And then I said the effort matrix. Now the effort matrix is saying that which feature or user story or epic will I do that will give me the most amount of impact with little amount of effort. So that will now determine which of the user story you put in. That will not define which of the user story, which of the features will be considered as which of the epics will be considered and which one would be suspended for later. So I then went down to the product development phase, and I explained that in building product development, you should also know that in Scrum, it is expected that your Scrum team size should be between 6 to 10 people. So you are expected that if you are going to do a Scrum team successfully, you need to have 6 to 10 people in that Scrum meeting. So why is it up to 6 to 10? Because you have designers in the midst, you have Scrum Master in the midst, you have the product development team in the mix. That's where you now see front-end developer, back-end developer, database developer, as the case may be. So you have different, so all of these people, when you combine the total number, it is expected that it should not be less than 6, and it should usually fall between 6 to 10. But that is just normal ideal case. Some people do more than 6. Some people can have 15, 20. Understand? It depends on the size of the company, how big the size of the company is. So what they now call it is, they call those stand-up event brainstorming events, or they don't necessarily tag it as sprint as such, especially when they're trying to determine what event to move in and what not to. So I now said something about, so how does it work? As a product manager, you will need to consider, you need to first consider how to build the product. So to do that, you need to understand the project vision, and that's where this first sector comes in. Then I said the second one is to plan and estimate. This is where you will now create user stories. You approve and estimate how long it's going to take to create the user stories. Then you create stacks from the user stories, and then you create your sprint backlog. That's the step 2. Then step 3, you implement. This is where the developer starts creating the deliverables and doing daily stand-up to confirm that the features has been well delivered. And then you groom the prioritized product backlog to ensure that you are only taking the things that are excessively important, so that you don't waste time working on things that are not important. Then I talked about review and retrospect. That is where you are now confirming and validating that all of the things you've done has been accomplished. So this, that one, they call it criteria acceptance goal. So criteria acceptance goal, that's where, or acceptance criteria, I don't know which, anyone that comes first though, but I do know that it's criteria acceptance goal, something like that. So what that one means is that you are looking at them, it's like the minimum criteria you must meet for a particular feature to be considered shipped. So for a feature to be considered shipped, they expect that you must meet a minimum criteria for it to be acceptable. If that minimum criteria is not met, it will not be accepted. Then you now have the product release. Product release is when you now launch this product to the market, and then people start using it, and you collect feedback based on what people have, their usage and their experience on the platform. So that is the end of my presentation. If anybody has any question, please feel free to ask. Thank you. Anybody with questions?
Hello, Mr. Austin.
Yes.
Thank
I'm done
you
with my
so much. I don't know if anybody has any question, but that was a world-class master class. I got logged in and out, but I'm going to watch the recordings at least 3 times this weekend. Any questions, Mr. Ola? You can wrap things up. Thank you so much. Wow.
Okay.
Thank you
very much,
you.
Mr. Austin. Thank you so much. I guess nobody's asking any questions. So, thank you everyone for joining. I encourage us to continue to on Thursday, next Thursday by 4 p.m. And I don't know, Mr. Sherry said we'll be unveiling our next speaker. Okay, maybe we'll do that in the group or something, or in the next class, or in the next webinar rather. Okay, so thank you everyone. I guess it's the end of the webinar. Please let's join. And if you know anyone on the group that have registered for this cohort, let them also join. Please encourage them to join from next week, Thursday. I mean, this has been a very powerful one. Thank you, Mr. Austin, once again. Thank you everyone for joining.
All right,
See you on
thank you
Thursday.
everyone, and have a wonderful day.
All right.
All right, bye-bye.